Now on the APEC VIP hotline, cutting-edge training for the serious athlete, apecgo.com, joining us right now on his way to Manhattan, Kansas for the Texas-Kansas State game, Jeff Howe from 24/7 Sports and Hook'em.com. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing really good. It's been a while, so it's good to be back on with you.
Good to have you on again with us, so appreciate that. I got to ask you, it seemed like things had kind of calmed down in Austin as Texas had gotten, it seemed like, back on track, and then came the loss to TCU on Thanksgiving night. What's it like around there now?
Volatile, to say the least. I think the best way to describe Mac Brown on Monday during his weekly press conference, he has the press conference that's televised on Longhorn Network and broadcast on radio, and then he goes and meets with the print reporters, and by the time he got to the print media, he looked beaten, he looked broken, he looked like a guy who wanted to do anything but come back for a 16th season. So, I think that loss took a lot out of him, and I think it took a lot out of the program because everything they were still hoping they could play for, even after, as bad as it was after the Oklahoma game and as bad as it was after the near disaster against Kansas, going into that game, they still had a chance at the Big 12 title, still had a chance at a BCS Bowl. All that's gone. And now you're going to try to make it right going into a place where historically Texas has never played well against the Bill Snyder coach team that's got 2 weeks to get ready for this game. So I think the sense, Bryan, is that everybody around that program is starting to realize that this season is not going the way everybody thought it was going to go at one point.
Do they have any idea why?
There's a couple of factors, and it's just like anytime anything goes wrong, I don't think there's one finite answer. But, among those factors, I think one is this team is still a little bit immature. All year it's been a team that hasn't done a good job of doing things like paying attention to details and taking care of business during the off weeks and really handling success. That's one thing that, you look at the 4-0 starts, and they had the back-to-back losses, and the offense has a great day against Baylor, and then sputters badly against Kansas. So it's just a team that hasn't dealt with success very well. So I think there's a lot of factors that go into it, but the bottom line is the players haven't done a good job of getting themselves prepared week to week, and I think a lot of that falls on the coaches for not getting a young team to play every week.
Tell you something else too that seems to be coming out a lot in just the message boards and in the articles I read. There's a lot of frustration now that Texas, after getting through what it seemed like was going to be the quarterback issues they had, it looked like David Ash had grabbed the job and was finally in control of it, and then he started to tail off here in the last few weeks, and then finally they had to make the change, and it looks like that's just as unsettled now as it was last year.
Yeah, Bryan, I think from the TCU loss, everything that loss meant, to me, that's the most disappointing thing for this program. Is, you're really, in the grand scheme of things, it's no different than where you were a year ago at the quarterback position when you didn't know which guy was going to start. And David Ash does have the rib injury, but Bryan Harsin came out and said on Monday that the rib injury didn't impact his play against TCU, and even if he were healthy, it would still be a battle between he and Case McCoy. So even after everything he's been through, you still don't really know who your quarterback is for the future going forward, and that's not a good thing for this program. I mean, you look at the successful programs in the country right now since Texas has fallen off. You look at where Ohio State's at with Braxton Miller. Obviously, you look at where Texas A&M is with Johnny Manziel, and the common thread is all of those schools have a quarterback that they know is there now. Is going to be their guy in the future, and the bottom line is, regardless of how anybody wants to spin it, is Texas just doesn't have that guy right now.
Well, is it a possibility then that neither one of these guys is going to be in the lineup next year?
It's possible. I would lean towards David Ash being the guy because I just don't know what your other options are. Jalen Overstreet, I think, is going to get a chance to probably prove himself in the spring a little bit more. Obviously, you'll see a little bit more of Connor Brewer in the spring. Tyrone Swoops, the four-star quarterback out of White Wright and North Texas, he'll be in for spring football. So you're going to have some more options, but I think if you look at the talent coming back, Bryan, you only lose 2 starters on defense. You literally bring everybody back on offense. If you made a change at quarterback and decided to go with one of the younger guys, then it dramatically drops expectations from a year in which everybody had pinpointed 2013 as being the year with no excuses that the program would be back on top where everybody expects Texas to be. So this quarterback situation is certainly befuddling. It's troubling, and I don't know that there's a clear-cut answer right now as to what they're going to do going forward.
And the only argument I would make there is that last time I checked, Johnny Manziel's a freshman.
Yeah, and like I said, The worrisome part about Connor Brewer or Jalen Overstreet is right now you just don't know. You won't know until you throw them in there. And I think the one thing that Mac Brown did, some people see it as a negative, I see it as a positive, is, with David Ash being injured, they've gone ahead and made Alex King their punter, the backup quarterback this week, and if something were to happen to Ace McCoy, so they won't pull a red shirt off of Connor Brewer or Jalen Overstreet. And I actually like that move because I don't think there's any sense in throwing one of those kids in there for 5 to 10 reps, pretty meaningless reps at the end of the year, and wasting a year of eligibility. You're going to give them a full year to develop. Connor Brewer was in last spring, so we'll see what those guys had during the spring, Bryan. But if I get gun to my head, if I had to give you a name on who I think takes the first snap in spring football, I still tend to think it's David Ash.
Okay. Jeff Howe with 24/7 Sports and Hook'em.com on Bryan Houston Sports Radio Live on 99.3 Talk FM. Another issue coming into all of this is the fact that the loss came to TCU, and Gary Patterson's a really hot name right now, and I would imagine that there are some people in Longhorn Nation right now that are really lusting after this guy, right?
No question about it, and I think the thing that, kind of frustrates Texas fans, especially Bryan, there's a lot of stuff that's frustrating the Texas fan base from that loss, but I think one thing is, you've heard all year about the Texas coaching staff saying, well, it's tough to defend spread offenses in the Big 12. It's almost impossible to spread offenses in this conference. Well, Bryan, there's TCU's done a pretty good job of defending the spread offense with a roster that's really, really young and really inexperienced. So I think that's the frustrating thing is they see TCU doing it. And I think there's no question that in terms of an X's and O's guy, a game day preparation guy, a guy who can motivate his team, I really think there are very few in the country that are as good as Gary Patterson is at doing that. And you topple that on top of what he does as an evaluator on the recruiting trail, because TCU, it's not Texas or Oklahoma where you can go out and kind of cherry pick the kids you want recruiting. You really got to mine East Texas, the Golden Triangle, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio. You really got to mine the talent pools in this state and really do a lot of legwork. And they evaluate prospects as good or better than anybody in the country has for the last 5 or 6 years. So there are a lot of factors, those included, and many more that I think, Gary Patterson, his wife is a Texas grad. So I think you factor all those things in, and there are a lot of Texas fans right now who think, when it is time to make a change or when Mac Brown decides to step aside, Gary Patterson would make a lot of sense.
Now, you would think that with a man that's won a national championship there and has the record that Mac has, that he could go out on his own terms. What happens if they get blasted by Kansas State Saturday night?
Bryan, I've checked with a lot of different sources this week. I have, and then Bobby Burton has at Hook'em.com, and we've basically come to this conclusion. From everything our sources have told us as of right now, everybody should plan on Mac Brown being the head coach at Texas in 2013. Now, if that's subject to change, yes. I don't know if a blowout loss to Kansas State would do it, but I think if there was the impression given that this team has quit or that it's definitely going in the wrong direction and they reach the point of no return, then I think you could see a change, but the change wouldn't be in anyone forcing Mac out. I think it would be him deciding to step down. Right now, I don't see that. And when you talk about people making the decision, I think you need to look at that, the really, high money donors close to this program, the guys like Red McCombs, the guys like Joe Jamel, the guys that are extremely influential in helping make decisions that impact that football program, and guys that are really close friends of Mac. And everything I've heard, Bryan, to this point is that those guys are still 100% behind Mac. So as long as those guys remain in his corner, I think he's going to be fine. I think he'll be back for 2013, but I don't know that that's necessarily a 100% stone cold lock to happen. I think it's subject to change based on a few factors. But again, everything I've heard, the big money donors and the guys who impact those decisions greatly are still 100% behind Mac.
Okay, so what do you think happens on Saturday night?
I racked my brain, Bryan, trying to figure out a way Texas wins this football game, and I just don't see it. I think with Case McCoy in, I think it shrinks your playbook dramatically. Texas is going to have to do a lot of things right offensively because I think at the end of the day, I don't know how anybody can trust this Texas defense that hasn't stopped anybody consistently all year, especially stopping teams that are really good at running the football and especially teams that use the quarterback run game really well. now you're facing a team that does it probably better than anybody in the country. So I don't know how Texas comes up with enough stops. Their offense is going to have to play virtually a perfect game, turnover-free game, control the football, try to keep Colin Klein and that Kansas State offense off the field. But, Bryan, I just don't see how they do it. I see this being a 37-21 type of victory for Kansas State.
And it's going to get even noisier than Austin then, I guess.
Yeah, without question if that happens.
Well, hey, Jeff, we do appreciate you taking some time out in between all the traveling you got to do. Safe travels. Enjoy the ball game, and thanks very much for coming on with us.
I appreciate it, Bryan. Let's do it again soon.
Good talking to you. Jeff Howe from 247sports, hook'em.com. Bryan Houston Sports Radio Live on 99.3 Talk FM.